Hey, what's going on everybody? Today we're gonna go over my Blitz deck that I built post Everfest. It's my Dash Blitz deck, of course. There's no other hero that I'd rather play. I wanted to make her as strong as possible for this skirmish season coming up, and I wanted to share my deck list with you guys. That way if you play Mechanologist or you wanted to give Mechanologist a try, you have something to go by. I'm not saying it's gonna work out for you, but it has for me lately, and I believe that it has potential. So I wanted to definitely show it to you and let you guys know exactly why I picked certain cards that I did and why I took out certain ones. We're gonna start out with what I like to call the item package. That includes the item that you start with as a Mechanologist Dash and 2 more items. Then we also have to add the Spark of Genius to be able to fetch one of those 2 items that is going to be in the deck. Then we also have what I call the buff package that includes 2 red locked and loadeds and 2 red rotary rams to give your Mechanologist attack +3. It's a cost of 0, so those are good cards to add. Then we also have the combo enders, as I would like to call it. That's the Overblast and the Payload, both red pitch. We have the red combustible courier to give our next attack +3. We only have the red pitch because it attacks a 4. As you can tell, we have a pattern here where we're adding more damage to our next attack. We're trying to be as aggressive as possible, especially in this Blitz season coming up. I do want to say that this is just my preferred cards that I use. If you want to change something out of these cards, maybe change one of these Tekla Pounders here. You can maybe switch them out to another Tekla Core instead, but that would make your deck a little bit less aggressive, but that would be up to you. The next cards that we're gonna add are the full set of Throttle, the red pitch, the yellow pitch, and the blue pitch. The reason why is because Throttle is arguably one of the strongest Mechanologist cards just by itself. It costs 2 and it attacks for 6. It does many things. It can boost, so it can give you go again. It can also pop any Phantasms cards that come from Prism. So that's pretty great. The weakest Throttle version attacks for 4, and the only difference between that red Throttle and the red Payload is that the Payload doesn't boost, but what the Payload does do, Payload comes with Dominate if you boosted your previous attack in the chain link. It doesn't even have to be the previous attack in the chain link, you just have to have boosted in that same chain link. And while we're talking about one of our combo enders, let's talk about real quickly about Red Overblast, which is our second combo ender. What this one does is a base attack of 5, cost of 2. It does not boost, but it gains +1 for each time that you've boosted in a combat chain link. So this could potentially come for 6, even if you've only boosted once. If you boosted twice, 7. If you boosted 3 times, 8. Okay, so that's a little bit more rare, but it can happen. And the reason why I picked this over Maximum Velocity is because Maximum Velocity you have to boost 3 times in order to use it. Overblast you can use even if you don't boost at all for a simple 5. It's more consistent, and even if you get to boost 2 times instead of 3 times like Maximum Velocity, you at least get to attack for 7 with Overblast. So that's the huge benefit with it. Consistency and some power. Okay, but just going back to the Throttle, we're gonna have all the pitches for it, the red, the yellow, and the blue. Alright, the next card that we're gonna talk about is Blue Pedal to the Metal. Blue Pedal to the Metal is a base attack of 3. It's another one of our 2 cost attack cards, but it's also the blue pitch, so we can use it to pitch it for 3. The reason why we added it is because it's a 3 attack power, but it also gives Dominate to your next attack in general. It doesn't have to be Mechanologist, it doesn't have to be boosted, it just gets Dominate if this one hits. So in combination from a buffing attack like Locked and Loaded, or maybe the Stubby Hammers that would give it +1, you can definitely threaten to hit this one and then dominate your next attack. You can dominate anything if you happen to run E-Strikes, Command and Conquers, anything like that, they would get dominate. Imagine a dominated Command and Conquer. That'd be wild. But regardless, we don't run that card here. So what we're looking for is to dominate our gunshots or potentially our red overloads. From here we're going to move on to pretty much the cards that have to be included in every mechanologist deck. That includes all the 1 cost cards, pretty much all the zipper hits right here, the reds, the yellows, and the blues. The reds attack for 5 and it goes all the way down to 3. So that's a pretty good attack to have. Then we also have the red pitch high speed impact and the yellow pitch high speed impact. The reason why is because the yellow is a 3 attack and the red is a 4 attack, a little bit harder to block than just the 2. The difference between the high speed impact and the pedal to the metal is that pedal to the metal gives dominate to any attack. The high speed impact only gives dominate to your next boosted attack, the same combat chain link, and only if this card hits. And of course we're gonna be adding all the 0 to 60s, the reds, the blues, and the yellows. Something I want to point out is that the blue pitch 0 to 60 is going to be our only attack that attacks for 2 only. Most of our attacks are going to have a base attack of 3 or higher. And finally we're also going to have a red pitch T-bone, cost of 0 and base attack of 3. We're not going to get the other pitch because it's too weak for the effect. The effect says that if you boost, they must defend with an equipment that they own if able to, but the bad thing about it is that they can also block with equipment that blocks for 0, so it makes it a little bit difficult to actually make it useful. And that is essentially the whole deck. All 40 cards are right here. Of course we're only going to start with the 39 since we're going to start with the Tekla Pounder on the field. And now we're gonna move on. We're gonna gather all the cards here and we're gonna take a look at the equipment that we're gonna use. Okay, so for our weapon we're gonna bring the plasma barrel shot. It's a base attack of 1. It gains +1 for each time that you boost in a combat chain. So if you break the combat chain, it starts over. You can potentially build it up to attack for 4 or 5 depending on how many times you boost. Alternatively, if you don't have the plasma barrel shot, I've also seen people play the Talis Shard, the Lost Prince. It is a really good card, actually, a little bit underrated. But for now we're just going to be using the plasma barrel shot because it's the one I prefer. We're not gonna be using the regular pistol, and the reason why is because in Blitz I believe that you want to be as aggressive as possible, and the barrel shot can potentially come in with a heavier attack than just a single gunshot for 2. Okay, so for our equipment we're gonna start with the stubby hammers. Then we're always going to have the Achilles Accelerator, the Tekla Foundry Heart, and the Arcanite Skullcap. The Arcanite Skullcap, we're pretty much using it just for the block. It has 2 defense and it has Battle Worn. The Arcane Barrier 3, we're never going to use it really. So it's just for the block here. The Tekla Foundry Heart, we use it for the block, of course. It has Battle Worn of 2. And the effect is actually very useful. You can use the Tekla Foundry Heart if you boost it at least 1 time in a turn. You pay 1 resource to activate it. It's an action, of course. You banish the top 2 cards of your deck. For each Mechanologist card banished this way, you gain 1 resource back. So essentially, you get +1 resource by the end of using it, and all you have to do is banish 2 cards. The stubby hammers come into play because they give +1 to your base 3 or less attack action cards, and we have 10 of them in our deck, so we have about 25% of our deck that is 3 or less attack power. If we're planning to boosting at least twice in 1 turn, and we know that we're using 2 of the 3 base attack power cards, we want to break the stubby hammers to be able to take that 3 attack into that extra power of 4 and make it a little bit harder to block. And for our final equipment and our main one, it's going to be the Achilles Accelerator. It's the one that's going to give us the extra action point. We can only use it if we boost it at least once in a turn, but since we're the Mechanologist hero, that's going to be very easy for us. that's very much the only reason why we're gonna bring the Achilles Accelerator, but also for the Arcane Barrier. Now for Arcana matchup, we're also gonna want to be bringing the Mortal Eye. Essentially, it's just for the 2 Arcane Barrier, that's it, for nothing else. We're also gonna bring No Run Gloves for the extra 1 Arcane Barrier, and our Achilles Accelerator has 1 Arcane Barrier as well. So total, we want to bring 4 Arcane Barrier against Kano, but that would be the only change that we do. The only other scenario where we would use this same setup would be maybe against Visceri and maybe against Chain. And finally, the only other change that we would make is changing the Arcanite Skull Cap and the gloves for the Ironhide Gauntlet and the Ironhide Helm. And the only reason why we would bring those cards ever would be for Benji. There will be a bunch of Benjis, be ready.